As a government, we are united in saying that tackling the deficit is our first priority. All parts of government now have the challenge of a lifetime to find savings.
£6 billion this year. This might not always be the easy thing to do, but it is right. We will bring responsibility to rebuilding our economy, taking the easy route of pumping the bubble back up, repeating the mistakes of the past decade, building another unsustainable boom.
By a partnership government for radical school reform and for building the big society.
In May 2010, the Conservative and Liberal Democrats formed the new UK coalition government and within weeks of entering power announced massive widespread reforms of the public sector finances. As the country braced itself for the outcome of these reforms, it became clear that frontline services such as health, welfare and education would receive the brunt of the £6 billion of public sector cuts required under the new Chancellor's regime. Within 6 months, hundreds of people have been made redundant and thousands more jobs look to follow. In response to this, the TUC organised a mass lobby of Parliament. On the 19th of October 2010, thousands of trade unionists up and down the country descended on London to meet with their political representatives and voice their very serious concerns over these cuts. Amongst them, a small but determined band of NUT activists from Liverpool, and one man relentless in his mission to bring his message to the very heart of government. This is his story.
Mr Pickering goes to Westminster. Right down in London today, the NUT rally. And if you look over here, to my left we have Westminster Abbey and up on the streets. And to my right, Whitehall. So hello to everyone in Gattaca, especially the 7-6 for now. I'll see you tomorrow. But this is the beginning of our demonstration against the cuts, how to beat them. Good morning, class. My name is Mr Pickering, and today's lesson will be on the public sector cuts. First of all, our lesson objectives. Well, we won't be needing those. As with any good lesson, you will take from it what you need to, not what I prescribe. Okay, first off, what are public sector cuts? To give them their proper name, the Comprehensive Spending Review. Well, the Comprehensive Spending Review was set up by the Tory Lib Dem coalition government soon after they entered power in May 2010. George Osborne declared that every department in Whitehall should cut their budgets. Every department, from trade and industry to foreign investment to education. Every department must have cuts. We have to save and tighten our belts, they said. Fair enough. However, these cuts came at a massive price. And the price, perhaps in future we will find out, is too heavy to bear. Because it is the frontline services, mostly to do with welfare and also education, who are suffering most. Welfare is being cut savagely, and education is yet again going through another government blow. Not the first, not the last. So, why are we getting these cuts? We are borrowing and borrowing and borrowing, and we're spending and spending and spending, but we're not paying back. Is that what it is? Partly. Now, if it was entirely that, I would say, you know what, it's our fault, and we have to pay up, pay back, pay up, pay someone. But it's not our fault. Whose fault is it then? That's easy. It's the banks. Yes, it's a very easy answer, isn't it? Just blame the banks. You know, they got all that money, it must be their fault. Actually, yes, it is their fault. For 2 years, there's been a global financial meltdown. Banks across the globe have been putting us into recession. In fact, over the last 2 years, the government itself has had to nationalise 2 banks. Now this is a very sad state of affairs, especially when banks themselves are currently still receiving massive bonuses, and yet social workers, teachers, council workers, all facing the axe. So, is this the answer? Is the answer to simply cut, cut, cut until all the fat has been trimmed and we're down just to lean meat? No. We are not cutting the fat, we are starving the cow. Rather than actually cut the money, the answer is, and this may sound surprising, I'm no economist, but the answer is actually the government needs to spend more. To create prosperity, we need to spend more in our nation, creating more jobs, creating more opportunities for young people. Invest in education, not taking away from it. Now, I'm sure the government's been told this. I'm sure George Osborne's aware of this. And I cannot answer the inevitable question on your lips, why are they not acting on it? But throughout this film, hopefully, we'll have an idea of what needs to be done. And then I suppose the question is, why aren't they doing it? If you have this question by the end of this film, I have one piece of advice to you. Contact your MP. I've talked to mine, now talk to yours, and keep talking to them. You see, we elect them for 5 years. That's not the end of democracy. Democracy begins with a vote, but it never ends with a vote. These people in government currently have an ideology that says that I, as a teacher, am somehow a threat to them. Me? A threat? Never.
In November 2010, students also took to the streets of London, this time not only to protest against the public sector cuts, but also to the proposed increase to their tuition fees. Under Michael Gove's new plans, students would pay 3 times what they previously had for tuition fees, bringing it from £3,000 to approximately £9,000 a year. And despite the media trying to demonise the majority of students for what was the actions of a minority, young people continue to prove that they are not only a vital, but they are an essential part of our democracy and the future of our nation. As a teacher, I am proud to be able to teach the future generation, knowing that one day it is they who will make the decisions. But I also know that we must work with the young people and not leave them behind until we deem them old enough to make decisions. They, after all, will inherit what we leave behind, be it good or bad. As this young lady from Coventry proves, young people have a part to play now more than ever in our fight against these cuts.
Young people are an integral part of the community, and especially when they provide legal service, are a force to be reckoned with in terms of positive contributions within their communities and their city. I believe that youth workers are in an almost unique position in terms of the insight that they have into the minds of young people.
Big Ben in the background, we're that much closer to Parliament, we're off to see our MP now. This is Mr Pickering in Westminster, part 2.
So, how will the cuts affect us? Well, depending on who you are in society, they will have a very beneficial effect or a very detrimental effect on the future of your life. If you're a banker, life has never looked better. The sun is shining, birds are singing, and you've got a few £1 million of bonuses coming to you. Well done. If you're a single mother bringing up kids, well, not so great. If you're on benefits, look forward to them getting cut, housing benefit, child benefit. If you've made a cardinal sin of working, however, child tax credit, working tax credit, and that's as long as you can keep the job. The government likes to think that we're all in together. David Cameron has often talked about a big society. Well, he's right. We will all be in together soon. Life will not be about the haves and the have-nots. It'll mostly be about the have-nots. Have not a job, have not any money, have not a hope in hell. Yes, there'll be more have-nots than haves. We'll be the majority. We can all sit in gloom together. However, this is not really what the government wants. I'm going to read a little excerpt now from their Comprehensive Spending Review Treasury report. I put the smart glasses on for this because I want to look intelligent. And I quote, "The government is committed to carrying out Britain's unavoidable deficit reduction plan in a way that strengthens and unifies the country. Spending review will be guided by principles of freedom, fairness, responsibility, in order to demonstrate that we are all in this together." That is a direct quote from the document. Let's have a little look at that for a moment, shall we? Freedom. Do we have the freedom to say, no, we don't want a public sector cuts? Not really. Is it fair that the banks, 2 of which have been nationalised by this government, continue to pay out millions of pounds in bonuses to their chief executives, while there are people up and down the country who are losing their jobs? Not will lose, have lost. Well, I'm not getting any yeses for that one either. Is it responsible to claim we are all in this together, when in fact a small minority of people have got us into this situation, and a very small minority of people are still benefiting from it? I'll go back to the no again. And for the last part, are we all in this together really? You see, I say no, because in a sense, I'm lucky. I was able to make choices like many other people are. I chose to be a teacher. I chose to be in a trade union. I chose to go out to the world and get a degree. And those are choices that I'm proud to be able to have. I, however, realise not everyone has those choices, and it's not always their responsibility. Sometimes those in society who are most in need rely on us who have those choices to help them out. Because choices are power. Those people lying in hospital beds now, those people on the dole, those people bringing up kids with a meagre income, in a sense you might say they had all the choices I had, but they didn't have all the opportunities I had. For this reason, I say it is time now that we stand up for them. Because you see, a fair society is one in which the weakest and the most vulnerable are supported by the strongest. Those who have the opportunities must always stand up for those who don't. And if we don't, if we let them go by the wayside, and we forget about those who are less well off than us because we suffer a little bit, then truly we are no better than the people who wrote that report. We are not responsible, we are not fair, and we have no freedom. The banks are the ones who have to answer for this, and the government too. But we as a society, we're part of the problem if we don't stand up and do something about it. How will these cuts affect us? They will divide our nation. They will divide it between the haves and the have-nots. And the have-nots will continue to be divided until soon we are back to where we started. A land of warring tribes and divided people. I don't want that. I'm sure you don't want that. It's time to make a change. Let's do it together.